Welcome to this week's board game news. Last week I talked a bit more on news, not much on Kickstarter. This week it's going to be the other way around. So I hope you're ready to look at a ton of crowdfunding projects for the week of September 7th, 2022. We're going to start with some bad news first, then some more slightly positive and then funnier stories. First, we got to talk about Wizards of the Coast and their new Spelljammer book for D&D. If you didn't know, Spelljammer is, it's about Spelljammers, which are ships that you use magic to fuel and fly through space. Pretty much going beyond the horizon, allowing you to explore different planets, different worlds in a way that, at least for me, is not what I think of when I think of D&D. Now, unfortunately, though, it seems they didn't do the best job double checking their book once they released it. There could be more errors, but most of the reasons we're talking about it right now involve the race, the Hadozi. Now, these are a humanoid, if I could better turn, monkey fused with a flying squirrel kind of mix. They have a gliding ability, but because this is in space, this race, and I don't know if there are other, but I assume are about these races being found on other planets. The Hadozi story, though, is that they were a different almost species until some wizard showed up on the planet, and one bad wizard mutated them to make them his personal private army. But then some good wizards liked the enslaved Hadozi and helped them out to save the day. And unfortunately, this is showing some parallels with slave trade and also the good white slave owner kind of deal. And it's really weird because it's even like, I should never be hired as a cultural consultant, but I think I might have raised an eyebrow at this. And that's also one of the big issues here is the fact that this book, as far as we know, because I think it was Tasha's guide, they forgot to put the consultant on there, but has no cultural consultant attached to it. And because of this, a lot of people are going, what happened here? How could something so obvious just slip through the cracks like this? And Wizards has announced a formal apology. I think they've removed it from their digital book version available, but not they haven't the physical one because that requires times and changing, changing the print run. And as far as I don't think Wizards has ever recalled a book. I don't know if you could recall a book. This is right off the heels, though, of Journeys Through the Radiant Citadel, which released earlier this summer. One of its big points was the fact that each part of it was written by an author of color. So the question remains, was this just a one-time fluke? Are we going to maybe see them fix this pretty well and continue to try to make their landscape as inclusive as possible? Or are they going to be more of the company that shows up every now and then, throwing a bone, trying to show that they really care, but in the end, just trying to pump out that product as quickly as possible? And Wizards of the Coast, with both D&D and Magic, has been doing really well. So I don't think they are strapped, that they couldn't hire at least one consultant to just double check and read over the thing before having it hit public release. One thing that has constantly been coming up is how many different Kickstarter projects have had to charge for shipping again or had issues with different companies. You hear about it with many, usually larger products. And when we think of some larger products, a lot of them appear from Gamefound because Awaken Realms started there and has some very big miniatures and story games. So those are the kind of games you have to be a bit more worried because they're already expensive enough as it is to ship that big box, and you're going to be worried if you're going to have to pay again. It seems Gamefound is trying out a new program to see if it can solve this problem with the Stable Pledge program. This is an opt-in option for creators, but what happens is, should after collecting the pledge money, there is an increase in price, I think over 10% of what was paid, the backer has the option to get a full refund, no questions asked. Now, according to this as well, I believe Gamefound also refunds the creator for anything that they would take from it. So really, it's technically everyone gets their money back as if the person never pledged. Now, this could be different with stretch goals and all that stuff. But the idea is this is meant to allow people to back out if they're like, okay, I expected it to be this much early on, but now that it's changed so much more than what I was expecting, I want my money back. So this is going to give people more reliability that they should be safe, or at the very least, never feel like they've been bamboozled. Now, I'm wondering how this will go. It is opt-in, and the thing is, I feel if enough people opt in, it'll almost become a mandatory because people won't back your project if it doesn't exist. But for now, I imagine this is going to be more of a designed for bigger projects, because I imagine, like, let's say someone makes a game, not that big, easily can be held in one hand. That is not going to bother as many people with, let's say it increases 12%. That's not the same as if my pledge for Cthulhu Wars or Gloomhaven increased by 10%. Those boxes are so huge that a small percentage increase in shipping, it's drastic for the people in the back end too, as well as the backers. But that's going to be more where people are going to want to see this, because that's usually where I've heard the most people complain. Usually if it's a smaller item project and people are angry about it, it's because it just was never delivered, not that there was a strange price increase. So this is a good way to try to bring some insurance into this, what is in some ways, many would argue, a pre-order market rather than sometimes an actual backing to bring something into fruition. I don't know how creators are reacting to this yet. I can see both sides of them being happy because this will get more people to trust them. I can see some people being like, well, this could drop a lot of people off really quickly, and I need to be really sure on my shipping prices. So I'm going to have to up shipping earlier on to begin with, which means that's not going to drive people away. Obviously, this is just getting started. I'm sure Gamefound's going to tweak it as things go. Maybe that 10% is not the right number. But I like the fact that they're trying to come up with something new. And that's what I think a lot of crowdfunding needs right now. I think that's why I'm excited with Backer and Kickstarter trying to change things up, trying to look at the audience now and trying to give more for both the audience, the backers, and the creators in order to actually bring great projects to the table in a much more friendlier, enjoyable path. Finally, a quick but funny one. There is a new tabletop book being released based on the world of Monty Python titled Coculicular Medieval Reenactment Program. It looks like an RPG, but on the cover, it has it crossed off and saying, no, it isn't. In this totally not RPG, one player will be playing as the head of light entertainment, and the rest will be set in a world that is medieval, not King Arthur, unless that's where you want to go. The designers wanted this to be something that celebrates all of Monty Python, not just one particular story. So it's written in a way for you can have different personalities, different jokes going on. And I'm sure you may be in that medieval times, but maybe you walk through a castle and actually walk off set into a new, completely different setting. So this looks like a really silly idea of trying to celebrate all of Monty Python, be it from The Life of Brian to Flying Circus. And I believe it'll be coming to Kickstarter a little bit later. And I'm sure it'll be one of my Kickstarter Pickstarter picks. So odds are it's going to be a funny one to check out. Before we get to Kickstarters, we have a few announcements of games coming down the pipeline. First off, from Direwolf, we have a digital version of Munchkin, the classic game of backstabbing everyone loves. This is obviously designed to be a bit more, if you've ever played a Direwolf digital game, you know they do more than just make a tabletop simulator. Though I'm very worried to see, or not worried, I guess I feel bad for the programmers if they decide to do more than just the original Munchkin and go through the entire Munchkin line. Next up, we have Pictures Christmas, which is the next, or I guess, Christmas version of the Pictures game. If you don't remember that one was actually the 2020 Spiel des Jahres winner. So this is obviously a Christmas variant and should be out in time this winter. Then we have a Rotten Tomato game from Cryptozoic. Apparently, you will read a movie description and people will try to guess like where it landed on the Rotten Tomato score. Unfortunately, I'm pretty sure you'll need to wait 3 days before you're actually allowed to play the game. And finally, we have a new set from Flesh and Blood titled Dynasty. In this one, the Emperor is taking on a rebellion. It'll have plenty of new cards, of course, to support previous classes, but will include a new class as well. I told you we got a lot of Kickstarter news and a lot of big projects came out this week. So without further ado, let's take a look at what projects are trying to rob you of your wallet. Starting off, we have Dawn of Ulos, which is from the Thunderworks, aka the role player line, and is set in sort of that same fantasy world. In this, you'll be playing as actually deities, fighting over a new plane that has been crafted. In this plane, new races are going to come in, and you are going to be influencing all of them, adding some of their cards to your own loyalty, even changing up the board in terms of what terrain's going to be around, deciding the fate of all the mortals in the new plane of Ulos. I really like this style of game in which it's not simply just I control this army, you control this army, who can grab the most territory. It's all about you almost all being shadow puppets, in this case the gods, controlling many different armies. Maybe you decide to influence one more because of that just works better for you, but it feels much more of just watching as everyone isn't always controlling the same thing, and maybe you're accidentally helping each other because you both are putting your power and your bets behind one army. I love this idea, and I feel like it requires a bit more thinking outside of just what are my own troops doing. If you're interested in this, the first pledge is for $59, but you can get more for more deluxe stuff, and of course, any of the other fantastic games in the role player universe. This one won't be a surprise for anyone who followed my Gen Con videos, and that's the Fox Experiment. This game is it's a roll and write, but adds so much more than any of the others I've seen. The game is based on an experiment of trying to breed domestic foxes, and in this, you'll be doing that. That's where the roll and write comes in. You'll be breeding 2 foxes, and depending on the dice you roll, your new fox will have those stats, and you'll roll more dice depending on the stats of the parents. But there's so much more going on. You'll be leveling up your base camp. You'll be getting certain powers, trying to get foxes with specific kinds of attributes. I really like that this game isn't just taking roll and write bigger, but what it's doing is taking roll and write but adding with other mechanics. It's what I said previously in my Gen Con top 10, where it feels more like really love it when there's deck building, but also troop management and also board presence. This feels like the start of where roll and write, at least I want roll and write to go, where you may be rolling some dice and writing things down, but there may be other elements to the game that's going on. Now, you can get the retail price for $55, but there's a Kickstarter exclusive one for $60, the $5 more, but from what I can tell, it's mostly deluxe stuff, components, not game mechanic involved components, but you can take a look and see if this is a game that you may be excited about as much as I was. Next, we have an expansion for a game admittedly I missed out on, but from what I can tell, a lot of people think it's a fantastic game. Merchant's Cove is a game when you all play about merchants, their own asymmetrical, unique styles, and this new expansion not only adds some new cool merchants, in particular, I think the detective is the one that looked really cool for me. There's also a new faction festival board. This is a new tracker for you to interact with the different factions to get bonuses. It's part of this holiday, and I'm sure there's some other rules as well. Like I said, this game was one that I have not had the chance to play, but just looking at this, looking at how the people have responded to it, this looks like a game I should have picked up the first time. Now, if you were smart enough and got it, you need to pay $69 for just the expansion, but you, of course, can get some more, quite a bit more, if you want the base game with the new expansion as well, which is the boat that I'm pretty much in right now. This next one comes from Garfield Games, and while it's not one I was hearing about early on talk about, it's one after seeing it, I love the idea and sounds so cool. Legacy of You is a solo-only campaign game in which you are trying to build the canal in China and evolve the river, but it's got story elements, the art style combined with the idea of knowing it's a solo campaign, so I don't have to feel guilty. This feels more like something I might buy because, well, I'm buying a video game for myself. It's what I expect. I want to play the single player game. And I love this idea of being able to have that in a board game, a campaign game no less, that's designed with that strictly in mind. And of course, component and mechanic wise, Garfield Games always hits it out of the park. It's always been so much fun to see what they have. But if you want to try it out before you know, they do have it on Tabletop Simulator with no spoilers. And if you're worried about the idea of a single player campaign, well, I mean, have you ever bought a single player video game? If so, then that's probably already a check mark in that box for you. Now, if you want it, it's going to be a lot cheaper than most AAA single player games at around $42, and you can check it out. And honestly, I'm hoping that this becomes more of a trend of single player campaigns. Odds are, if you backed all the games, you have a game that uses Game Tray Lab components to help organize your game. It seems now that they're diving into the world of board gaming with the game Forsaken. This looks like to be designed to be an open world game in which there's going to be different ways the game and different stories for you to follow, not just for the overall arching world, but each character has their own story they're trying to complete. It looks like the kind of game which they can already think about what components they use for stories. They're like, all right, how can we use that for game components too? So they sort of go all out in trying to make this table presence of all these different things that hold the boards, as well as a dice tower with different levels going on. Of course, I like the idea of the characters having their own story as well as the main overarching. It makes me think of the Firefly game, which I am a big fan of, but something that gives you a bit more personalization, more akin to maybe something like Destinies, in which your character has its own story arc that they're trying to go through. That said, with all that story and all these great storage and components, it's going to come at a price. The starting pledge is around $189. So this is a very big one, but it could be one that is just going to give you, it's going to make it worth its time in all the different stories and endings that you're going to try and hunt down. Finally, we have the return of a remake, Rivet Wars. This is, as they say, World War I meets Diesel Punk, in which you are fighting against each other with these little minis. Some of them actually can be used to customize each other, like different pilots that pilot different units that give you different abilities. And this new version has a lot of cool stuff. I know there's some obvious things you expect, like gameplay, but there's also a new faction that they've added, and I assume that affects the campaign. I don't know if the campaign's gonna be the exact same in the previous one, but if there's a new faction, my guess is they've added and edited so you can mess around with that. And that campaign, by the way, can be either competitive, cooperative, or solo. So this game is designed to try to fit whatever your play group needs at the time. Of course, if you already have all the old stuff, there is a veteran pledge for $139. But if you're new to this, the base game starts at $150 with plenty of other fun things to add on as well. Finally, though, let's get to some Kickstarters that you should keep an eye out because they're coming to an end soon. First off, we've got a few that we've already talked about. We've got Trailblazers, definitely the perfect game for if you're more outdoors and traveling. We've got Space Lion, which looks like an interesting, quick reading your opponent's cards, trying to play yours at the right time in order to gain control of specific bases. And also Nanolith, this cyberpunk legacy style game that's designed to be very quick to get on the table and get going. Finally, there's another one. I don't remember seeing this one, but Seas of Legends, Vengeance of the Empire. Looks like a big sandbox piratey game. So if you want to do a bunch of different stories, travel around the world, prove your piratiness, definitely one to go check out. But that's it for now. Let me know what your thoughts on all this are. You can let me know in those comments right down below, whether you're backing any of these Kickstarters or if you're going to wait if they have some similar guarantee to what Gamefound is offering. Love to hear from you. And thank you so much for sticking through to the end. Of course, you know, there's the usual things, the bell, the like, subscribe. It's the kind of things I should say more often. But if you think someone would be interested in any of these Kickstarters or maybe the news stories, please share this video with them. But for now, I'm Will, and this has been Roll for Crit.